Okay, good morning, all. This week's Torah portion is Parshat Korach. Parshat Korach is another portion that is the name of someone. Anyone think of any other portions that are names of people? Yisro is one. Chayesara, good. That's another. Balak, very good. She's on a roll today. She's on a bagel today. There's Pinchas, and there is Yisro, and there's Chayesara. Thank you, sir. Is this item? Yes, please. If you have a new address that you may want to add in this one. Okay. And Korach is a very interesting portion. It deals with one of the main themes of it is machlokes. Machlokes means strife or argument. We're going to find out a little bit more about Korach. He was a scholar, a wealthy man, and prophet even, but there you go. He was blinded a little bit. We're going to talk about that more. And in spite of being a great person, so we're going to talk about this thing called the Yetzer Hara. Anyone know what that means? How to translate that?
Evil inclination.
The evil inclination. What does that mean, the evil inclination? We each have within us the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, and the Yetzer Tov, the positive inclination. And these are two voices, if you will, within us that are demanding our attention and our focus. The Yetzer Tov wants us to be our higher self, wants us to have humility, wants us to be close to our to God and to godliness, and thinks about the future in the sense of not only this world, but the world to come. The world to come is the spiritual world, the world of souls, where the ultimate reward and punishment take place. The Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, wants us to focus on self, on the physical, on ego, and feel good now and not worry about what's going to happen in the future. And it moves us away usually from godliness and from God. If you have any questions about what I'm talking about, please feel free to interrupt. Now, Rav Dessler has a very beautiful way of describing this, and if I had my board here, I would do it on the board. And what he talks about is the concept of a battleground. Each and every one of us have our own battles that we have to fight. And what I mean by this is not with your competition at work. I mean within ourselves. I'll give you an example. Let's say somebody is not observing Shabbos, but keeping kosher. And their battleground is keeping the holidays. That's where the evil inclination and the positive inclination are at war with each other. Like the kosher, that part is basically okay. Shabbos, oh, I'm not ready to do that. That's my busiest day at work. I'm not doing that. But the holidays, I'd like to start keeping, and I'm battling with that. Another example would be where kosher and Shabbos are okay, easy for them to take care of. Getting angry easily, no, and I'm not working on myself for that one. That's people make me upset too quickly and too easily. But my battleground is not wasting time and making more time for Torah learning. A third example would be I study Torah, my battleground is kosher and Shabbos I'm not keeping, but my battleground is making sure to light Shabbos candles on time. So what's the commonality between all these three examples? And these are random examples. Everybody will have their own individual examples. What's the commonality between them? The commonality will be, anyone want to try? There's certain parts of a battle, like a battlefield, that we've conquered, certain parts we have not conquered, and then there's the point of intersection between the positive and the negative. And that, the battleground shifts. Hopefully, the good guy is winning and we're conquering more and dealing with other issues because we've taken care of this issue and moved on to the next one. The inclination is pushing us the other way. Does everyone understand the idea? Is it? I think it's a very important analogy.
It's almost like you're saying that I keep keeping kosher, pretty much got that under control. The holidays, and Shabbat, I'm definitely not there yet. I'm not gonna mess with that right now. But making time for Torah study, I could and I want to, but it's hard. It's like the two sides are meeting each other on the battleground, and now there's an opportunity to engage each other.
Correct. That's what the battleground is. That's what so we're going to see about Korach who had to deal with this. Now, interestingly enough, several years ago, one of the boys in my class asked a fascinating question for a 5-year-old boy, blown away by it. He asked, why did Hashem create a Yetzer Hara? Why did he create an evil inclination? For a 5-year-old, it's a very wonderful philosophical question. So I complimented him and I said to the boys, what would your answer be to that wonderful question? And again, they were talking about 5-6-year-old boys. Two great answers. One boy said, to make us stronger. And another boy said, so we should choose. Couldn't have said it better myself. All right? Really amazing. Okay? And that's the name of the game. The name of the game is that we have, you see, in Christianity, there's a concept of the God and the devil, and they're fighting each other. Judaism, there's no such concept because the bad guys are also on God's payroll. The idea is for us to have the power and try to flex our muscles and grow our muscles so that we can choose properly. That is, and what's important is we have to realize that the evil inclination is relentless. The evil inclination does not have any union. They get no time off, and 24/7 till 120 years. It never stops trying to cause us to make mistakes. It's a beautiful prayer. It's found in your handy article, Siddur on page 21, in the middle of the page. I'm going to read part of it for you. Blessed are you, Hashem, our God, King of the universe, who removes sleep from my eyes and slumber from my eyelids. And may it be your will, Hashem, our God, and the God of our forefathers, that you accustom us to study your Torah and attach us to your commandments. Again, Yetzer Tov, getting closer. Do not bring us into the power of error, nor into the power of transgression and sin, nor into the power of challenge, nor into the power of scorn. Let not the evil inclination dominate us. Distance us from the evil person and an evil companion. Attach us to the good inclination and to good deeds, and compel our inclination to be subservient to you. Grant us today and every day grace, kindness, and mercy in your eyes, in the eyes of all who see us, and bestow beneficial kindnesses upon us. Blessed are you, Hashem, who bestows beneficial kindnesses upon his people Israel. A very beautiful prayer. And it deals with telling us about the evil inclination. Hashem, I need help, which is a very good thing to ask for in dealing especially with the evil inclination. And like I said, the evil inclination is relentless. And yes, there are things about parachuting into the other side and making gains in certain areas, or the enemy parachuting behind lines here and making gains in the negative. I'll share a Gemara with you. This is a piece of the Talmud and Gemara in Kedushin. It'll be quite shocking to you. The following is the story with Rav Amram, the pious. Now, Amram the pious means he's pious. He wasn't named, his family name wasn't pious. He was given that name because he was pious. Everyone got it? Okay. There were certain captured women that Rav Amram fought to make sure that they were redeemed. And they took them up to the second story house of Amram the pious so that they should be safe. And they took the ladder there so nobody should bother them, and they should be left alone. So as one of the redeemed women were passing by the hatch used between the upper story and the lower story, a light shone through the house through the hatch. She was must be also spiritual person because there was a light coming in. And Rav Amram was enthralled by her and took a ladder that 10 people would need, could not lift, and lifted it by himself and started climbing up the ladder to proposition her. Okay? When he reached the middle of the ladder, he spread his feet apart to steady himself on the ladder and started shouting, "Fire in the house of Amram! There's a fire in the house of Amram!" And everyone comes running. The rabbis came running, and they said to him, "You put us to shame." Because they saw there was no fire. What did he mean? What did he mean?
Spiritually, he was about to burn his house down.
Well, not necessarily. It means he was tempted. And they said to him, "You put us to shame." Why did they feel that he was putting them to shame? Because they're his students, and he's revealing that he was tempted to sin. Right? So he's putting them to shame. He's putting them to shame. So he said to them, "Better that you be shamed in the house of Amram in this world, and you not be shamed of him in the world to come."
We can't hear the rabbi. I can't hear. Yeah, I'm hearing something
Oh, good.
clicking. I'm hearing
I hear you.
clicking.
Oh,
Oh, yeah. Oh, was that you, Emily?
Well, I hear you. You have something to say on the Parsha?
Mute.
Take it over.
Do you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Now,
Okay.
yes.
All righty. Sorry, I don't know technical difficulties. I have no idea what happened. Okay, in any event, you heard most of the story till now from the Gemara, right? Rabbi Amram, you heard the story? Yes. So what happened was, he said to them, the rabbis came running and they said, put us to shame. And he answered, better that you be shamed in the house of Amram in this world and you not be shamed of him in the world to come. So Rav Amram then told the evil inclination to leave him. He demanded that evil inclination leave him, and it issued from him in the form of a fiery column. And Rav Amram said to the evil inclination, observe, you are fire and I'm mere flesh, yet I am stronger than you. Powerful stuff, powerful story. Powerful story. And the lesson is very clear. And again, as always in the Torah, there is nothing to be hidden. It's real. It's very real, and it tells us the truth. So the evil inclination is there, and there's actually a wonderful book called Battle Plan. I think we have it in the library, written by Rebbe Heller and Yocheved Riegler, on how to fight against the evil inclination. And the name of the book is Battle Plan, based upon this idea from Rav Dessler. All right, so so we have to be aware. The bottom line is the evil inclination is a lifelong companion, and it's something we have to be aware of all the time, and we know what it wants to do. So now we have to understand something important. The Gemara tells us that even though we're looking at these people, and including the story with Rav Amram, we're looking at them as mere mortals. And they were mortal, but our sages tell us a very beautiful lesson. If the first people, the great people of the past, are looked upon as angels, then we're like people. But if we look at them as mere people, then we're like donkeys. So what does that mean? What's the concept there? The concept is that we can't look at great people in our past as being simple people that have the same exact inclination that we do. And if we do that, we end up messing up, because if these great people, in our view, made a mistake, then what are we? But if we understand that they were holy, they were angelic, they may have made a mistake, or almost made a mistake, but they were holy, great people, then we can be human beings still. So that's an important idea. there's a great story with Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, who was on a plane, and his granddaughter was accompanying him. Excuse me. And there was a fellow sitting next to him that said, I'm very impressed. Your granddaughter comes and your granddaughter comes and takes care of you and trying to help you and do whatever you need and get you whatever you want. My grandkids come to me if they want some money. That's, I don't have any, they're not treating me with any big respect. And Rabbi Yaakov said, can I be honest with you? He said, sure. He says, we believe that the Sinai experience, and even before that, the forefathers and the matriarchs and the patriarchs, Avrohom, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Sarah, Rachel, and Leah, these were unbelievable people beyond our comprehension. And we, and after the Sinai experience, we're further and further away from that experience, so we're not on the same spiritual level. So therefore, it makes sense that our grandkids should respect the grandparents because they are closer to the Sinai experience and closer to the matriarch and the patriarch. You, however, believe man came from monkey. So why should your grandkids respect you? You're closer to the monkey than they are. They're further developed than you. So you should respect them because they're further developed than you. A very, very, very powerful and clever answer that he was saying. And the lesson for us is obvious. So we have to look at the lessons and appreciate what happened and learn from them, but realize still there was some of them, they were very great people. So let's take a look at the Hebrew machlokes, which is divisiveness and fighting, comes from the word chelek, to pieces. Shalom, peace, comes from the word shalem, to be whole and complete. So this is an important idea. So who was Korach? We said he was a scholar and wealthy and a prophet. He knew that Samuel the prophet, would be coming from him. He knew this. And he had a family tree. He was from the tribe of Levi. I can't show it to you up close. I'll put it on the screen for a second. And I'll tell it to you. Levi was on top, one of the sons of Yaakov. He had 3 sons, Gershom, Kahath, and Merari. So Kahath was one of his sons. And Kahath had Amram, Yitzhar, Hebron, and Uziel. Amram had Moshe and Aaron. Moshe was the leader and Aaron was the high priest. Yitzhar had Korach. So Korach was also a leader of his family, but he wanted more. He didn't like that Moshe was the leader and his brother was the high priest. He looked at it as nepotism. Said, and of course it had nothing to do with Moshe, because Moshe wasn't the one who chose. God was the one who chose them. So he decided that he was going to rabble-rouse against Moshe. Now, our sages tell us something very powerful, which, by the way, will give you a crash course in advertising. Our sages tell us in the book of prophets, 3 things take a person out of this world. Hakina, hataiva, v'hakavod. Kina is jealousy, taiva is lust, and kavod is the pursuit of honor. Kina, taiva, the kavod. So let me give you an example of this. And I said this on the video this past week also. The Marlboro Man, for those who remember that cigarette commercial. Good-looking guy with a cowboy hat that never looked so good in the West. There never was such a good hat in the West. But the idea of you smoked a cigarette and that made you look macho. Or the guy who was driving a beautiful car down the one with a beautiful woman, no traffic and perfect weather. what's the idea? The idea is if you had this car, you would have the same thing. So it's playing on jealousy and playing on lust and playing on pursuit of honor. And in this particular case, we actually find one of the commentators says something very beautiful. It says, by the way, if you want to know where there's an Ethics of Fathers, it's chapter 4. So 2 weeks ago, Bahalaischa, the place that they were dealing with was they wanted the food, they wanted real food. That was kind of a desire. Last week, the spies wanted to maintain their honor, and that's one of the interpretations we learned. So that's covered honor. And in this week's portion, Korach, he was jealous. So it's kinna, it's jealousy. So these are the three things that he was looking at. So what he did was, he wanted greatness for himself. He said Moshe made this up. And what he did was, he asked interesting questions to Moshe. He said, what happens if a house is filled with Torah books? You still need to put a mezuzah, the case on the door with the parchment in the door. And Moshe said, of course you have to do that. He said, that's silly. The house is full of books. What do you need to have it? He said, there's a blue thread. We don't know exactly what it is today, but there used to be a blue thread on the tzitzit that they had, a special blue dye that they had for one thread of the tzitzit. What happens if the whole garment is made out of blue? Do you still need the blue dye? And Moshe said, yes, that's what God's commandment is. And Korach made fun. He said, we're all scholars. We're a nation of priests. We don't need to have leadership like that. What he really meant was, he wants to be the leader.
We don't need you for the leader.
Yeah, right, but he was saying, no, we don't need leadership. We don't need to have. We all have great people here. It's fine. Now, interestingly enough, our sages tell us a powerful verse from Mishlei, from Proverbs. He says, Chachmas nashim banta beisa, the wisdom of women build a house, but the wicked woman destroys the house with their own hands. Very powerful statement. And there's example in this week's Parsha about this. The wise woman builds the house. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. The wicked one, because Korach's wife pushed him and said, why are you letting them take all the honor for themselves? You should have it. And pushed him. And it ended up being disastrous, as we're going to find out shortly. I had a discussion with a woman once who was having a hard time in her marriage. And I tried to encourage her. And I said, there's a verse in Proverbs that says, the wise woman builds her house. Say, no, I don't want to hear that. That doesn't apply to me. I said, okay, you're right. That one doesn't apply to you. But there's the second part of the verse that applies then. Because what's that? That the wicked woman breaks her house. Ah! She didn't listen. But be that as it may, Korach's wife instigated him to push for this. And what Moshe does is, he got other people involved. Now, there's a very fascinating idea, which is an important idea to know, that there's two levels of sinning. There's a person who sins. We're all guilty of that on some level. But the person who sins and makes other people sin, that's really problematic. And, unfortunately, it's a big problem today because, for example, some non-Orthodox rabbis will officiate at a same-sex marriage. It's not really a marriage, but that's what they're calling it. Now, don't get me wrong, I understand where the people that are involved in this are coming from, especially they don't have a background. But when you're, quote, officially a rabbi, and you're sanctifying something that the Torah says is an abomination, that's a problem. That's a very big problem. But that's a side issue. So, but what Korach did was he instigated other people to join him to be against Moshe. Moshe was very upset, very distraught about it, and he tried to talk peace. And he said to them, bring an incense offering the next day, and we'll see if Hashem accepts it. Tries to talk peace, and thus and Aviram, two people that went with Korach, refused to talk to Moshe about it. And here Moshe was on the right, and he was still trying to reach out to make peace. Very special, and teaches us an important lesson. And in the Shemona Esrei, at the end of the silent devotion, when we say the verse, Oseh Shalom B'mroma, we take 3 steps back when we ask God to make peace on high and make peace on this world. To teach us that to make peace, you have to sometimes bend, and you have to go back, and you have to be humble. And even though you may be right, still, what can you do to make peace? And what ended up happening is Moshe prayed that may it be that something unique happened, something unusual happened in their deaths, so that it's very clear that I didn't pick Aaron, that it's all from you, God. And what ends up happening is, and it's not about him, it's about the honor of the Torah. The ground opened up, and Korach and his people were swallowed into the ground, and they called out and said, Moshe emes v'Torah emes. Moshe is true and his Torah is true. Now the problem is, how did he see with prophecy that Samuel the prophet would come out of him if he and the people with him were swallowed into the ground? And the answer is, some of Korach's children did tshuva at the end. They repented. And therefore Shmuel came. So he was a prophet to see Shmuel, and that gave him a full sense of security. Well, obviously, I must be a great guy. I must be right, because I see that Shmuel the prophet, Samuel the prophet's coming out of me, but not realizing that his son did tshuva, did repent. Many years ago, I went to Israel, and I went to the Knesset on the tour, and they have a beautiful painting, a Mark Chagall painting in the hall of an overview of Jewish history. And I really wasn't so interested in the Knesset tour, but I figured I'll just, I was a tourist, so I figured I'll go check it out. And I went there on the tour, and then there was part of Mark Chagall's picture is a picture of a man falling into the ground. And one of the people said, what is that picture of? And the tour guide, unfortunately, an Israeli woman, didn't know. She looked around and said, ask him. And she pointed to me. She figured I would know what it was. So I told them it was Korach, the story of Korach. So that was my very short Israeli tour guide experience that I have on my resume. 2 minutes of Israeli tour guide in the Knesset. But that's the story there. So we see the power of tshuva. Now, interestingly enough, there was On ben Pele was from the tribe of Reuven that was near Korach, was influenced to join. And On's wife said, what are you doing joining with Korach? You're in the tribe of Reuven. You're not going to get any glory for yourself because you're not a Levite. So what are you doing? He says, no, but I committed. I want to be with him. So what did she do? She made him a heavy meal with a lot of wine and had him fall asleep. And she sat outside the tent and uncovered her hair, which isn't modest, because religious women usually cover their hair either with a wig, with a kerchief or hat. And when they came to get him to join bringing the incense, they couldn't go close because she wasn't dressed modestly. So she basically got him out of the picture by knocking him out and keeping him in the house. So this is the 2 examples in the portion of the women that so There were 3 women who caused their husband's death. One was Chava, who persuaded Adam to eat from the fruit of the tree of knowledge. Delilah, who got from Shimshon the secret of power, and therefore eventually delivered him to death. Queen Isabel, who influenced her husband, King Achav, to perform wicked deeds. But other women rescued their husbands, that's On's wife, and Michal ben Shaul saved David from Shaul. So, again, based upon that verse in Mishlei, the power of women to do positive or negative is powerful. So what happened was they were all destroyed, and but the pans were left. The pans were used to cover the altar as a reminder that don't question the Kohanim, don't question their leadership. Now, interestingly enough, God was very upset at the entire Jewish people. Can anyone figure out why? Yeah. Let me just turn the air on for a second. Why was he angry at all of the people for the Korach rebellion? Any thoughts? Excellent, Angela. They didn't speak up. They should have protested. They should have said, no, Moshe is right. This is a very famous line. And this is an important line. It's there's a big issue in schools called bullying. And guess how many participants there are when there's bullying? There is the bully, there's the person who's getting bullied, and then there's everybody else that is passive and doesn't do anything. And that's a very important idea to teach, that we should be involved. And people don't like being involved. It's so interesting. I was on a flight one time, and there was a smell of smoke. And I called the stewardess over and I said, there's something smells funny. And I said, I'm going to look right into it. And someone looks at me and says, what's the matter with you? Now we're going to be delayed. I apologize. I'm sorry. For some reason, I didn't want the plane to go up in flames while we're in the air. I don't know why I had that kind of crazy idea in my head. Like, no, don't make waves. You know what I'm saying? Don't make trouble. So there was someone who said a great line. First, they came for the socialists, and I didn't speak out because I was not a socialist. They then came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I wasn't a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I wasn't a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. Very powerful, very powerful. So Moshe, again, pleads on their behalf. Again, so what happened was, the job of the Leviim was to guard the Mishkan, and each tribe was told to bring a stick and place it in the Mishkan overnight. And the tribe of Levi should have Aaron's name on it. And what ends up happening is the next morning they take it out, and all the other sticks are just sticks. But amazingly, the tribe of Levi's tribe with Aaron's name on it blossomed with almonds. Now, in case you know that sticks don't normally grow things on their own like that. They have to be part of a tree, but that's not what happened. Also in this week's portion is, and by the way, the concept of leadership, Moshe was not paid. He didn't get any gifts. He didn't, he was doing it all for the sake of just serving the people and trying to help them. And the Jewish leaders are not elected. Moshe Feinstein, one of the greatest Jewish law authorities in the 20th century, was asked by the New York Times, how did you get elected to be, what election? I don't know what you're talking about. People ask me questions, and they like the answer, so more people come and ask me questions. Like the answer doesn't mean they got to hear what they wanted. He just had the brilliant clarity to be able to answer the Jewish law questions. And he has a whole, by the way, book of response of questions people ask him, all modern questions. Very fascinating kind of practical laws of is artificial insemination. Are you allowed to use that to try to have a child? Can you use a Shabbat elevator that automatically goes from floor to floor on its own without pushing the button? Many fascinating questions. So the end of the portion deals with the 24 gifts given to the priests and for the Levites, and some had to be eaten by them only in the court of the Mishkan. Some could be eaten in Jerusalem. Some could be eaten throughout the entire land of Israel. And the idea for us is the importance of supporting the army of Hashem. And tithing goes to the Levine as well. And at the end of the portion has the story about the Pidyon Haben, the redemption of the firstborn child that normally would have worked in the Mishkan, but because of the sin of the golden calf, the tribe of Levi, who didn't sin, got to work. So the father has to give the Kohen 5 gold coins as part of the redemption of his firstborn son. All right. I want to tell you something interesting. We'll conclude with this interesting idea. I'm not going to write it on the. I don't have set up to write it on the words. When you have an argument, let me ask you what your opinion is. What is the challenge of when you have an argument?
Be careful how you respond.
You have to be careful how to respond. And what did you want to say? Some humility. Okay, good.
Maybe you have to understand the other person's point of view. You have to know.
Want to understand other people's point of view. That's very good. So,
Count to 10 or 15 before you say anything.
Count to 10 or 15 before you say anything. Yeah, some people need 50, not only 15. But in any event, now the word for the Rav Shita, great Hasidic master, it says that Korach took himself to one side. And the word side in Hebrew is tzad, tzadik dalet, which is a numerical value of 94. When you only see your side, then you're only seeing your side. It's very hard to see the other side. But if you see your side and then the other side, so tzad, 2 sides, the numerical value of that is 94 plus 94 is 188, which makes a different word, pikeach, someone who's smart or wise. Now, what happens if both people can see both sides of the coin? Pikeach and pikeach, 184 plus 180, 188 plus 188 equals 376, and then that equals to the word shalom, peace. So don't look at the debate that we had this week as a way of looking for peace or wiseness. Everybody was on their side and making fun of the other side. But to try to truly understand the other person, if you can, and I'm not saying this is easy, don't get me wrong. If you can see one side and the other side, one side and the other side, then you're wise. And if both people can see one side and the other side, then you actually have shalom, peace, harmony. Powerful lesson. All right. Any questions, thoughts, comments? The floor is open. Yes, Andrew. Thank you very much. Hashem should continue to help. Hashem should continue to help.
However, when discussing Korach, you probably don't want to say that the floor is open. Yeah?
Okay.
Right? You might fall in.
Well, you're lucky we're on the bottom floor, so it's okay. Any
Rabbi?
questions, thoughts, doing?
Yeah, I got a question. After
Yes,
making
sir.
after making already the sin of the spies, how long did they wait before this Korach thing, and why would they follow one, going against the will of God against another? Like,
Well, most of the Jews didn't follow. It was just a few, it was Korach and his people and around 250 people with him. But the other people were passive. They weren't involved. They didn't join
Okay.
either side.
Was this right after though? Was this soon after? Or was this years later?
I don't know exactly. You have to understand there are many stories that happened during the course of 40 years, but I don't know exactly when it happened.
Okay.
All right? Thoughts?
Very much.
Going once, twice? That's a very good question. Where does that leave us? Should we be involved? And the answer to that, I think, is not. I don't think we should counter protest. First of all, you're dealing with people that are violent, and obviously, if somebody is being hurt, we should defend them. That for sure. But I don't think there's a point in going and I mean, it depends very much on the circumstances. You're dealing with people that are hard in their faces and acting very violent, and it's not simple. If there's a way of doing it that, let's say, we could pass legislature that people can't protest with faces covered. You know what I'm saying? Like, that would be something that I would say. At the same time, we are in exile, and we have to be reminded that we are in exile and remember that. There's times and places, and it depends very much on the circumstances, when we should say something, when we shouldn't. And I can't give you a black and white. I think each case has to be, in other words, like what happened last week in Pico, the people, apparently it was known that these people were coming. Why the LAPD didn't come there is a very good question. But the rabbi, one of the rabbis in the synagogue that they were standing in front of, told the people not to show up and come in through the back if you want to come in to learn to pray. And they used the back entrance to get in. That's, but to go and fight, I'm not sure like I said, to save somebody for sure, to protect people for sure, but it's not about just being in somebody else's face. So that's they're not there to change their mind. When they're saying from the river to the sea, they're not talking about saving Jewish lives or having an open discussion about it. They're not. So again, I don't feel I'm giving you a complete answer, but there's times and places where we should say something, and times and places where we shouldn't. In the case here of the portion, a lot of people say, I'm not a Levi, so what does it mean? Let Korach and Aaron and Moshe fight it out. That was wrong. That's not correct. Okay. But the question, like I said, is a good one, because sometimes we have to say something, and sometimes we have to be silent. But sometimes it's important to have a voice. Many of us, like I said, are passive that way. Any other comments, thoughts, questions? Okay. Everybody have a wonderful week, and you're very welcome. God will see you next week. Library is
Thank
open.
you.
You're welcome. There's
Thank you.
candles in the back for Shabbat.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care. Have a good one, everybody.
Thank you, Anthony.
Thanks, Rabbi Czapnik. It's Connie. Shavua Tov. Be well.